Mark Shaw, welcome to Totally 80s.
Gary, thanks very much. It's
Good
lovely
to
be here.
see you.
Yeah, you
now,
too.
can we start talking first about the 1980s and your experience during those years? I want to get on to your tour and possibly the idea of some new material as well. But how did Then Jerico get together?
Well, I'll tell you what happened, Gary. I actually put an advert in Melody Maker. I'd never been in a band, I always wanted to be, but I didn't have any sort of musical friends. I didn't have any friends, actually, so no change there. I didn't know how to go about forming a band, but I used to read Melody Maker avidly. And I noticed that there was loads of adverts of people auditioning, other band members. So I just put an advert in. I used to sell advertising, so I knew that if you started with the letter A, you would go directly to the head of the advert column. So I put A Boy with Style. Seeks, drums, bass, guitar, vocals. I put record. We have record deal, we have management, we have publishing, imminent tour. None of which, of course, had. Well, I didn't have. And then I auditioned. I had 37 guys in one room at the same time because nobody told me that you had to have them in one at a time.
Okay.
So I just had everybody playing, and I just picked the ones that looked the best and the ones I could hear, who were the loudest and the biggest posers. That's kind of how it happened.
Were you careful to pick boys who weren't quite as pretty as you?
No, I tried to go for people that were way, way better looking than me because I was a spotty incalcitrant youth, if that's the word, and I was just, I didn't have any real clue about how to go about putting a band together, but I knew with the right people I could make the noise I wanted. I'm a lyricist and a melodist predominantly, so not really being an instrumentalist, it seemed important to have people that I felt had a grasp of the kind of music I wanted to make, which is very much in the Bowie Roxy tradition.
Yeah. Your vocals were great on tracks like Big Area and The Motive. Were you a trained singer?
Not at all, no. I've had about 6 lessons. I just bellow, really. I'm very lucky. I've had some excellent producers over the years, people like Gary Langan and Steve Brown and Owen Davis and Martin Rushent, rest in peace, Martin, he was lovely. And they really taught me how to get the best out of my voice and what to look for and what tonally sounded the best on my records, and then they put loads of effects on it and made it sound good.
But this is the years way before auto-tune, so you must be able to sing a bit.
Well, I'm really glad that we did actually grow up in the years when there wasn't so much gimmickry, because it meant you did have to be on your mettle and you did have to learn just the basics of musicianship.
Mm. Yeah. Let's ask the million times asked question. How did you get the name?
From the Bible. Of course, Joshua led the Israelites. Well, they were wandered around in the desert for years on God's will, and then of course they crossed the River Jordan, surrounded the walled city of Jericho, and they surrounded it, and they chanted for 7 days, and they created subsonics, incredibly low vibrations, and they believed it was the power of God. And those that occupied Jericho just didn't want, a bunch of very upset Jewish people sitting around their wall chanting for 7 days, so the walls crumbled, and they blew ram's horns, which was where I believe where the expression horn section comes from. Uh-huh. They were trumpets, they were basic trumpets. They were effectively, they created a sound that was so powerful that the walls actually crumbled. And I loved the idea that music can change the world and that you can have a non-violent revolution, and with a little bit of faith and a lot of determination, you can actually achieve wonders. So that's what it was based on.
So why don't you just call yourself Jericho?
Because, first of all, there's a band called It's Immaterial from Liverpool, and I love the prefix It's. Everyone's called The. It just seems so boring. The Stones, the this, the that. And I thought, well, that's a bit dull. Why is everyone called The Police? And why not just Then? Because it was Then Jericho. No one's believed in the power of music, but Then Jericho happened. It was going to be that or Screaming Virgins, because I was living in a squat at the time. And I only had two books. One was the Bible and one was a porn magazine. So.
Bible and Playboy.
Yeah, basically, well, it was worse than Playboy. It didn't have the quality of Playboy. So it was going to be Screaming Virgins or Then Jericho. I should have gone with the former, I think.
Possibly. Well, you could have been a good punk band as that.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
You were mentioning before your style via Roxy Music and David Bowie.
We were channeling a lot on that.
Yeah. How did you feel about other groups that went that way a little bit before you, like, say, Duran Duran, Human League?
I don't think they came close,
no.
To be honest with you. I think what they tried to do came out sounding a lot like other bands in their own genre, rather than... I don't think Duran sounded anything like Roxy. I think the first album it touches maybe, but there wasn't a lot of David going on in there. I'm talking more about Bowie's oblique and perhaps slightly more left field albums like Low and Heroes, rather than the direct sort of thrust of something like Scary Monsters. That was more inspiration. But there was loads of inspiration behind the basic Jericho. I mean, there was obviously a lot of Iggy Pop in there, Led Zepp, basically we were rock boys without a soul influence. But I mean, more stylistically, we're affected by the glam period, I think, very much by people like, Bolan. But by the time we'd gone through the punk era and come out the other side through the whole new wave, and then of course Neuromanticism, which I sort of bounced off. I was a Blitz kid before it was called Neuromantic, before we were called that. We were the movement with no name, as Jackie Charlton called us. I was very aware that it was important to move away visually from your heroes. So thus we wore clothes, we wore clothes that were very different from our heroes. We didn't want to be a flash, gimmicky kind of band. So we went more for sort of texture, and we went for plainer colours, and we tried to do something which we felt reflected the lyrical side of the music rather than perhaps the glamour that was screaming to get out, really.
Yeah. Your lyrical content and the sort of big, heroic musical landscape all came together on Big Area. Tell us a bit about that song.
The song itself was written very quickly, actually. It was we were in a studio rehearsing, which we did a lot in those days. We always wrote in a rehearsal setup, in that we are very much a band, even though I write the lyrics and the melody, and I write a large amount of each song, a large portion of each song. It is very much a band. Everybody puts ideas in, and we sort of argue about the details later, but essentially I was listening to them all playing around. Everyone was playing something different. They were all jamming different ideas, all trying out various new instruments, new guitars, because when you've had a hit album, you suddenly get new guitars and things. Oh, let's see what this does. A lot of that experimentation taking place. And I was actually outside the room, and they were all playing these different things, and I kind of thought, that works. It's like an unholy racket. So I walked in and asked the guitarist to change key, and I told the keyboard player, who was literally trying out a sequence, in various different scales. I said, look, can you just change the notation slightly but follow the same pattern? I kind of directed everyone, and they all thought, what the hell is he doing? I said, look, trust me, we're on the verge of something really exciting here. There was a cohesion within that madness. We need to just focus it. So I got them to keep playing the same chords over and over, which is what Big Area is. It's actually the same 5 or 6 chords repeated all the way through. Yeah. So there isn't really a verse or chorus structure as such. It's just the same chords with me singing different vocal melodies over it. And I just started singing and said, right, that's the verse. Wow. Here's the next bit, that's the chorus. And they said, well, it's the same. And I said, well, yeah, but it won't be when I finish with the lyrics. Just bear with me. And about an hour later, we played it back on our old cassette recorders, and we thought, yeah, there's something there. We knew we had something. And it kicked around for a couple of weeks, then we played it to the record company, to our A&R man, and he just wet himself and said, my God, that's a hit. And we played it live for about a year. We actually played it at the end of our first The Sound of Music tour, our first album. We played it as an encore, and it got such a great reaction. And I was changing the lyrics every night, which I still do. We actually did about 20 TV shows before we'd even recorded the thing. We did the Montreux Festival. So we knew we had something. Yeah. And we only recorded it when they finally said, okay, Mark, we need the final lyrics, please. Yeah. I'm still working on it. Give me time. We've had 2 years. Get in there and record it. So again, we went in and we recorded it, and it all came together as this beautiful piece of work, which I think defines who we are and has stood the test of time. I'm very proud to say.
I think it's still a bladder weakener. Actually.
Thank you very much.
Very much so. Now, you were talking about Then Jerico very much in the present tense there. Before we move on to what you're doing now with the guys, let's just quickly cover off how it ended. What was the nail in the coffin that finished off?
Standing on shaky ground ever since you put me down. That was a bit of a tricky question there.
Well, how did it finish? Well, this is what we all want to know. You're back now, but what was the thing that
the catalyst
drove the
well, really, egos, drugs, women, all the normal things. We all had. I got divorced. Everybody else got married. We had friends, girlfriends, wives, all kinds of people on the tour bus. We were all off our faces on various different substances, which doesn't help. I was an alcoholic, which again didn't help. Well, I'm a recovering alcoholic, so that's still to some degree true. And what happened was, if you sort of are under the amount of pressure and you work as hard as we were, and then you find that your egos start to take over, then you start to attack one another rather than focus on the greater enemy, if you like, which of course is always the press. Sorry, we're not the press, but no. I mean, it's rather than dealing with the fact that we should be getting on with our jobs, we started a lot of internal fighting, a lot of infighting, and I think we're all listening to the people that surrounded us, that were telling us that we were all more important than each other, and those normal frustrations gave, I think, they were given vent in the most absurd situations, like before we're about to go on tour and before we're about to do a television show. And rather than thinking that everybody else was actually working very hard around us just to give us the opportunity to make successes of our lives and to get our music to people, we were just too arrogant to recognise that. And we thought it was all about us. We became complete and utter a-holes. And, well, I certainly did. I don't know about the rest of the guys, but I think they'd probably agree with me that we all became rather up ourselves. And we just let everybody else down and decided that we were more important and we didn't want to work together, and all the toys went out of the pram. I stormed out. And also, London Records did not want the band really to continue in its present form. They wanted me to make a solo record. I didn't want to do that. The rest of the band didn't want me to do that either. But we couldn't carry on as a band, so I basically was offered a deal by EMI, so I went and joined EMI. I wanted the band to come with me. They stayed with London. So it was a forced departure, really, because we couldn't work together, and it would seem we couldn't really work apart. Yeah.
Well, not many divorces end in reconciliation.
Certainly not.
You're back together. What was the process of getting everybody back together? Who made the first moves?
It was me. I actually met up with Scott Taylor, our guitarist, and one of the major forces in the band. Scott's a very talented guy. And we met up again to discuss film music. We were asked to write some music for a film. And we sort of grudgingly got together and we just got on. And after a couple of hours, we sort of realised that we were still mates. He still spoke to the rest of the guys. And he said, yeah, we should do some gigs, just the two of us. So we thought about doing that. Because I've been carrying on with Then Jerico in various different guises. I've released 3 albums in fact, and I've had various different lineups, but I think there was still deep inside that desire to just give it one more crack and see what would happen, because we just understood each other musically so well. So I said to Scott, look, I've got this idea, we should go out and tour the Big Area album, because loads of bands are doing, Primal Scream have done it, or
track by track.
Yeah. And it seems like I'd love to do it, and I've had a few offers, and he said, well, you're going to have to make the move, Mark, because it's got to come from you. You own the name and you're sort of the leader, as it were. So if you've got if you can swallow your pride. So I did, and I emailed everybody and got a few tertiary responses and found that, beneath the sort of, the initial mistrust, there actually was quite a lot of warmth there. And so I called them up and said, listen, do you want to do this? And luckily, I'm very glad to say John Wing at the Academy offered us a fantastic tour. And I've always wanted to play the Academy venues anyway, because they're great gigs to play, and they're proper rock and roll. There's nothing to they're good, what I call authentic rock and roll venues. You can go and make a racket in those places. The sounds are always fantastic in there, and there's very well put together organisation. I like the way they operate. So I thought, if we're going to do it, these people will understand what it is we're trying to do. We don't want any frills. We want something that's just basic, straightforward rock and roll, and prove that we were a very good live band and we can be again. So I rang up and said, right, well, we've got a tour. And they all went, oh God, we better start rehearsing.
Tell us about the first rehearsal.
Well, that's yet to happen. We've all been working at home. Yeah, we're all working at home. Well, Steve, the drummer, lives in New Zealand. Rob, the lead guitarist, lives in Spain somewhere. He doesn't even know where. He moves around. He's Welsh, He never knows where he is. Jasper, the bass player, lives up in the Midlands somewhere. Scott works for PRS, and I just sort of doss around doing nothing and painting my nails normally. So we have to organise that. Now, it's a matter of flying everybody in. We have had a couple of meetings, and we did sort of jam through a few songs on acoustic guitars. Yeah. Sounded good. So we know the magic's there.
Good.
But the full-on electric rehearsals have yet to happen. The immense din we're about to make is going to scare the hell out of each other, let alone anybody else.
So you've corralled the boys back, perhaps even just over the net so far.
Yeah.
Yet to have your first serious rehearsal.
Yeah.
Yet to do the tour. But you must be thinking, if you're going to get the boys back together, there has to be a new project. You must be thinking about an album or something. Give us a hint. What have you got in mind?
All right. Well, okay. I've been writing a lot the last few years. I always write. I am a professional songwriter. I've been published for many years to do that. But I don't really write for other people. I tend to write for myself. I'm selfish. And I'd write albums. And what it is effectively is that I played some material to the guys. They came back with a few ideas of their own that they had. And we realised that we may well have an album of new material. But again, that would be something that would have to take shape when we sat down and rehearsed it, because we like to work as a band, as I said. So it would be a matter of give and take, playing through a few new songs and seeing what's going to happen with it. So at the moment, all I can say is we have one song called The Last Chance that we've all collaborated on that sounds very Jericho, but I think we need like another another 10 or so to go with it to make an album. So
Right.
I'll get back to you on that.
Okay. You worked with Belinda Carlisle
Oh,
on a track. What was it like?
gorgeous.
Yeah.
We were produced by a guy called Rick Knowles. And Rick produced Belinda and Stevie Nicks and various other artists. And I really liked the way he, just the performances he got out of Belinda. I've always had a lot of respect for her. And had a bit of a crush on her, I think most.
Who hasn't?
I was going to say most guys do have. And she's gorgeous and she's lovely. And she's got that amazing voice, that just such an unusual voice. And she's got a lot of energy. When she sings, there's something very special about her personality. It really shines through. And I wanted somebody cool, somebody sexy, and someone who I felt perhaps had a certain vibrant quality. And I said to Rick, we had What Does It Take? It was actually written by a girl called Sandy Stewart and a guy called David Knowles. No, sorry, start again. Sandy Stewart and David Munday. And Rick Knowles played it to me, and they had 3/4 of the song, and I said, that's great. I want to work on that. So I put a bit into it and said to the guys, look, I've got this song. We don't normally do this, but we've got this song. And I put bits into it. I think we should do this. We should give it a try. And we played it and it just started to sound like Jericho. So we Jerichoed it, which means we sort of, put a few bomb notes in there. We like to make things a little bit dirty. We don't like them too perfect. We like them to be a little bit scruffy. So we brought a little bit of, I don't know, how can you put this? We put a few blue notes in there and we made it a little bit unusual, scruffed it up, smashed it up, re-edited it all, put it back together as a song and said, right, we need a backing vocalist, let's get Belinda. Belinda very kindly agreed to do it. And we spent 3 glorious days in Los Angeles with her singing and me just drooling, mainly.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really a hit. We call it Ishtar, in fact, because everybody said it was going to be such a huge hit, but unfortunately due to various problems with distribution and the nature of the industry can be sometimes you can try your hardest to get it right, all your ducks are in a row, but still it doesn't work. So it didn't really become a hit single.
It's your Heaven's Gate.
It is. Well, unfortunately, I think if you release it on the same day as U2, Simple Minds, Big Country, The Alarm and In Excess, you've kind of got a problem.
Yeah.
But I mean, in London Records' defence, they did try hard to get it right, but I think that probably we already had such huge expectations of it.
Yeah.
But I'm very proud of it as a record. We love it as a record. It goes down a storm live, so it's still a big live favourite. So that'll be featured heavily on the tour. But no, she is not going to come and sing.
That was going to be my next
unless we kidnap her. I'd love her to.
Are you still friends?
Oh God, yes, I did a gig with her about 6 months ago, and she's fantastic. But I think she just gets upset because I start sort of getting a bit clammy and a bit touchy-feely. She doesn't like that. She's married.
Clammy,
touchy-feely, a little bit too touchy-feely. No, I would love her to. I'll be totally honest. I have yet to ask her because it seems a little bit presumptuous of me just to say, "Hey, Belinda, you gonna come in?" Because Steve, the drummer, actually played in her band for 5 years. So if anybody's in a position to make the approach, I think it's down to you, Steve. Get on the phone, bro.
Come on, Steve.
Yeah, but I mean, let's call her out right now. Why don't we give her an official invitation here on Totally 80s Radio? Belinda, my darling, I need you, baby. Will you please come and sing on What Does It Take when we do the Academy tour in September, Then Jerico reunion tour? Please, please, baby, please. You know you want to.
And he'll keep a professional distance,
I
he
promise.
says.
I can't promise.
We're looking forward to the Motive, Sugar Box, big area.
Yeah.
Mark Jericho, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks very much indeed, Gary King. That was
and
great.
talking to us on Totally 80s.
It's been a pleasure.